The chamber was enormous, stretching upward into darkness that seemed to have no end. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the center of a circular platform, her heart pounding as she looked around at the dozens of alien species surrounding her. Some floated in containment fields filled with strange gases. Others perched on crystalline structures that grew from the walls. A few resembled nothing she had ever imagined, their bodies shifting and changing as they observed her with what she hoped was curiosity, rather than hunger. This was the Galactic Council, and Sarah Chen was the first human to stand before them. She had prepared for this moment for 3 years, ever since humanity had finally cracked faster than light travel. The breakthrough had come from Dr. James Morrison's lab in Geneva, a revolutionary engine that folded space itself. Within months, human ships had ventured beyond the solar system. Within a year, they had encountered their first alien probe. The probe had led them here, to this massive station orbiting a binary star system thousands of light years from Earth. Sarah wore her best diplomatic uniform, dark blue with the emblem of United Earth on her shoulder. She had practiced her speech 1,000 times. She carried gifts from Earth, music, art, mathematical proofs, and samples of human culture. She was ready to introduce humanity to the galactic community as equals, as friends, as partners in exploring the universe. She was not ready for what came next. A being materialized in the center of the chamber, hovering above all the others. It had no solid form that Sarah could see, just a swirling mass of colors that hurt to look at directly. When it spoke, the words appeared directly in her mind, translated by technology she did not understand. "We are Chancellor Morathan, voice of the Galactic Council. You represent the species called humans, from the planet you name Earth. We have reviewed your petition for contact. We have studied your world, your history, your biology. We have reached our conclusion." Sarah felt a surge of hope. This was it. Humanity would join the galactic community. They would learn from thousands of older civilizations. They would share their own unique perspectives. The future was bright. The Council has determined that your species lacks the necessary qualities for independent civilization status. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She blinked, certain she had misunderstood. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" "Your species is weak," another voice said. This one came from a creature that looked like a massive insect, easily 3 meters tall with armored plating that gleamed under the chamber's lights. 4 arms ended in razor-sharp claws. Its compound eyes reflected Sarah's image 1,000 times over. "You have no natural weapons. No armor, no venom, no telepathic abilities. No capacity for surviving in hostile environments. By what right do you claim equality with true apex species?" Sarah forced herself to stay calm. "We have intelligence. We have technology. We have built a civilization that spans our entire planet. We have achieved faster than light travel through our own research and development. We have art, music, philosophy, science. We are more than our biology." A rippling sound filled the chamber. Sarah realized with growing horror that many of the aliens were laughing. "You achieved FTL travel in the most primitive manner possible," the insect creature continued. It moved closer to the platform and Sarah had to fight the urge to step back. "You use controlled explosions to reach orbit. You still breathe oxygen, a highly corrosive and dangerous gas. Your bodies are fragile. Your lifespan is brief. You fight among yourselves constantly. Your planet is a Class 12 death world, yet somehow you survived it without developing any meaningful evolutionary advantages." "High Commander Vrexcal speaks truth," Chancellor Morathan said. "The Council has encountered many species over millions of years. We have learned to recognize which civilizations will contribute to galactic society, and which require guidance. Humanity falls into the latter category." Sarah's diplomatic training warred with her rising anger. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Servant species status," Vrexcal said, and Sarah heard satisfaction in his translated voice. "You will be assigned to various Council species based on your aptitudes. Your people are dexterous, adaptable, and capable of surviving in varied environments. You will make excellent workers. In time, perhaps in 10 or 20,000 years, you may prove worthy of reconsideration. You want to enslave us." Sarah said the words quietly, but they echoed through the chamber. "We prefer the term guidance," Chancellor Morathan replied. "Many species have begun this way. Some have even graduated to independent status. The Yalveth, for example, served for only 8,000 years before proving their worth." Sarah looked around the chamber, searching for any sign of support, any species that might object to what was being proposed. She saw only indifference or agreement. These beings had decided humanity's fate without truly knowing them. They had judged humans by their biology alone, never considering what made humanity unique. "We refuse," Sarah said firmly. "Humanity claims its right to independence. We will not serve. We will not submit. We are a free people and we will remain free." Vrexkal moved even closer. His claws clicked against the platform's surface. "You do not have a choice. The Council has voted. The decision is final. A subjugation fleet will travel to your homeworld. Your military, such as it is, will stand down. Your governments will transfer authority to Council oversight. This process has been refined over millions of years. Resistance is both futile and irrational." "Then I suppose humans are irrational," Sarah said. She touched the communicator on her wrist, knowing it would not work here, knowing the Council had blocked all transmissions. But she had to try. She had to warn Earth. "You are being detained," Chancellor Morathan announced. "You will remain on this station while the integration process begins. Your crew will be held as well. Once your species has accepted its new role, you will be returned to serve as a liaison between humanity and the Council." 4 guards materialized around Sarah. They were humanoid in shape, but clearly robotic, their metallic bodies inscribed with glowing symbols. They did not touch her, but made it clear she was no longer free to move. "How many ships are you sending?" Sarah asked. She needed to know. She needed any information she could gather. 50 warships, Vrexkal said, his mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. "The Krynith Empire will handle the subjugation personally. It is an honor we requested, as we require additional workers for our mining operations in the outer territories. Your people will serve us well." 50 ships for an entire planet? "That seems like a lot," Sarah said, fishing for information. "It is more than sufficient," Vrexkal replied. "Most species surrender after the initial display of force. Those who resist typically collapse within hours once they realize the futility of opposing Council authority. Your primitive weapons will be useless against Krynith battlecruisers. Your planet will be secured within 3 standard days." Sarah was escorted from the chamber. As the doors closed behind her, she heard Vrexkal giving orders to his subordinates. The fleet would depart immediately. They expected to reach Earth within 2 weeks. In the small cell where the guards placed her, Sarah sat on the hard bench and put her head in her hands. She had failed. She had come here hoping to establish peaceful relations, and instead, she had triggered an invasion. 50 warships were on their way to Earth, and there was nothing she could do to stop them. But Sarah had not become Earth's chief diplomat by giving up easily. She studied the cell, looking for any weakness, any possibility of escape or communication. The walls were smooth and featureless. The door had no visible lock or handle. The ceiling emitted a soft light that never changed. She was completely isolated. Hours passed. Sarah paced the cell, her mind racing. She thought about her family back on Earth, her husband Marcus and their daughter Emma. She thought about the billions of people who had no idea what was coming. She thought about human history, all the times humanity had faced extinction and somehow survived. The cell door opened suddenly. A creature entered, unlike any Sarah had seen in the council chamber. It was vaguely reptilian, with scales that shifted through a spectrum of colors. It had 4 eyes arranged around its head and walked on 2 legs, though its body was built low to the ground. "Do not speak," the creature said in surprisingly clear English. "I have limited time. My name is Kelthar. I am a xenopsychologist. I study alien species for the Council." Sarah stayed silent, though questions burned in her mind. "I reviewed the files on humanity," Kelthar continued. "The Council made a mistake. A terrible mistake. Vrexkal sees only biology. He does not understand behavior, psychology, or culture. I tried to warn them, but I was overruled." "What mistake?" Sarah whispered. "Humans are not weak," Kelthar said. His scales rippled with colors Sarah had never seen before. "You are the most dangerous species I have studied in my entire career. Your planet is a death world. Do you know what that means? It means your environment tried to kill you at every stage of your evolution. Yet you survived. You thrived. You conquered your entire planet. That doesn't make us dangerous to the Council," Sarah said, though hope was stirring in her chest. "Your planet has megafauna that can kill you with ease, yet you hunted them to extinction. Your weather patterns can destroy cities, yet you build them anyway. Your species created weapons capable of sterilizing your entire planet, yet you chose not to use them. You have been fighting wars for your entire recorded history. Every generation of humans has known conflict, struggle, and survival against impossible odds. Kelthar moved closer to the transparent barrier that separated them. The Krynith evolved on a world with no major predators. They became apex through size and strength, but they have never faced a true challenge. None of the Council species have. We have all evolved in environments that were, by your standards, gentle. We fight wars, yes, but they are wars of territory and resources, not survival. We do not understand what humanity represents. What do we represent? Sarah asked. Persistence, Kelthar said simply. You do not know when to quit. It is your greatest strength and your greatest danger to yourselves. The Council thinks you will surrender when faced with superior force. They do not understand that surrender is not in your nature. You will fight even knowing you cannot win, and that fight will shock the galaxy. Can you help us? Sarah asked. Can you stop the fleet? No, Kelthar said. I am one voice among thousands, but I can do this. He placed a small device against the barrier. This will allow you one transmission. It is brief, compressed, and will burn out after use. The Council will detect it, but by then it will be too late. Warn your people. Tell them what is coming. And tell them this. The Krynith use energy shields designed to stop plasma weapons. They have never faced kinetic weapons at relativistic speeds. Their tactics assume enemies who think like them. Use that. Before Sarah could respond, Kelthar was gone. The device he had left began to glow. Sarah grabbed it and activated her communicator. She had perhaps 30 seconds before the Council's security systems caught the transmission. This is Ambassador Chen to Earth Defense Command. Urgent priority Alpha. We have been rejected by the Galactic Council. They are sending 50 warships to conquer Earth. Arrival in approximately 2 weeks. They expect us to surrender. They have energy shields but have never faced kinetic weapons. They expect conventional tactics. Do not give them what they expect. Do not surrender. Fight smart. I believe in us. Chen out! The device sparked and died. Alarms began sounding throughout the station. Sarah sat back down on the bench and waited for the guards to come. She had done what she could. The message would reach Earth, compressed into a tight beam transmission that would arrive days before the Krynith fleet. Now it was up to humanity to prove the galaxy wrong about them. In the Council chamber, Vrexikal was already aboard his flagship preparing his fleet for departure. He reviewed the tactical plans one more time, though he knew them by heart. The approach would be standard. Arrive in overwhelming force, broadcast surrender demands, and wait for the inevitable capitulation. If the humans were foolish enough to resist, a few precise orbital strikes would convince them of their error. The entire operation would be complete in 3 days, possibly less. Vrexikal had subjugated 17 species in his career. Humans would be the 18th. He would return to the Council with another victory, another species added to the Krynith Empire's workforce. His reputation would grow. His status would rise. It would be, as always, a simple and clean operation. He had no way of knowing that he was about to face something the Galactic Council had never encountered before. A species that simply refused to accept the rules of galactic civilization. A species that would rather die fighting than live as servants. A species that had spent its entire evolutionary history learning one crucial lesson. Survival is not given. It is taken. The Krynith fleet departed, 50 warships strong, confident in their superiority and certain of their victory. They would learn their mistake soon enough. Admiral Marcus Drake stood in the command center of Earth Defense Command, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The message from his wife had arrived 6 days ago, compressed into a data burst that had taken their best cryptographers hours to decode. Now, with 8 days until the alien fleet arrived, every military installation on Earth and throughout the solar system was preparing for war. Marcus was a career military officer, 52 years old with gray hair and steady hands that had commanded fleets through dozens of simulations. But those had all been against human opponents, human tactics, human thinking. Now he faced an enemy that considered humans too primitive to even fight properly. That was their first mistake. Report, Marcus said, studying the holographic display that showed the entire solar system. Commander Patricia Wells stepped forward. She was 35, brilliant, and had been advocating for aggressive defense strategy since Earth first achieved FTL travel. All military assets are positioned. We have the 3rd Fleet holding at Mars orbit. The 7th Fleet is scattered among the asteroid belt, powered down and waiting. Our stealth satellites are positioned throughout the outer solar system. Every ship capable of mounting weapons has been retrofitted. The civilian population is being moved to underground shelters. How many ships do we have that can fight? Marcus asked, though he knew the answer would not be encouraging. 42 combat-ready vessels, Patricia replied. Another 20 support ships that we've armed with whatever we could mount. The civilian freighters are being loaded with kinetic payloads. We have 16 orbital defense platforms around Earth, 3 around Mars. The lunar base has been fortified with surface-to-space missiles. Marcus nodded slowly. Against 50 alien warships with superior technology, it should have been hopeless. But Marcus had spent the last 6 days studying everything Sarah had sent. Every detail about the Kryneth. Every scrap of information about the Galactic Council. And he had found something interesting. The aliens had been fighting the same way for millions of years. Their tactics were refined, efficient, and completely predictable. They had never faced an opponent who thought differently than they did. They had never fought humans. They will arrive at the edge of our solar system and broadcast their surrender demand, Marcus said, pointing to the holographic display. They will expect us to either surrender immediately or make a token resistance before surrendering. They have energy shields designed to stop plasma weapons. They have never encountered kinetic weapons at relativistic speeds. Our railguns, Patricia said, understanding immediately. Exactly. Every ship, every platform, every installation is equipped with them. Simple technology. Just accelerate a solid projectile to a significant fraction of light speed and let physics do the rest. Their shields might stop energy, but they were not designed for solid matter moving at 0.2 C. Another officer spoke up, Lieutenant Commander Jiang Wei. Sir, even if our weapons are effective, we are still outnumbered and outgunned. Their ships are larger, faster, and have been fighting wars for thousands of years. That's their second mistake, Marcus said. They assume we think like them. They assume we will fight a conventional battle, formation against formation, honor and tactics, and all the things they have refined over millennia. We are not going to do that. He gestured, and the holographic display changed, showing a battle plan that made several officers gasp. We are going to fight like humans, Marcus continued. We are going to cheat, lie, ambush, and do every dirty trick we have learned from 10,000 years of killing each other. We are going to show them what happens when you underestimate a Death World species. The plan was insane. It violated every principle of space warfare that the military academies taught. It relied on deception, sacrifice, and a willingness to accept losses that no rational commander would consider. It was perfect. 8 days later, the Kryneth fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system. High Commander Vrexkal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Inevitable Conquest, and surveyed the primitive star system before him. One yellow star, several rocky planets, some gas giants, the standard arrangement. The third planet from the star was their target, a blue-green world that sensors showed was teeming with life. Begin the standard protocol, Vrexkal ordered. Broadcast the surrender demand in their primary languages. Display our full fleet formation. Let them see what they face. The communications officer complied. The message was simple and had been used thousands of times before. Inhabitants of Earth, you are hereby notified that your planet has been designated for integration into the Galactic Council as a servant species. Surrender your military forces immediately. Comply with all instructions from Council representatives. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. You have 1 standard hour to respond. Vrexkal settled into his command throne and waited. Typically, primitive species responded within minutes, either with immediate surrender or with confused questions. Very few chose to resist, and those who did usually collapsed after a single demonstration of superior firepower. 30 minutes passed. No response came. Communications, verify the message was received, Vrexkal ordered. Confirmed, High Commander. Multiple listening posts on the third planet received our broadcast. They are capable of responding but have chosen not to. Vrexkal's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Perhaps they do not understand the gravity of their situation. Move the fleet to inner system. Take a position above their largest moon. Let them see our ships up close. The 50 Kryneth warships activated their FTL drives and jumped deeper into the solar system, emerging in orbit around Earth's moon. Each ship was a kilometer long, bristling with plasma cannons and protected by energy shields that had never failed in combat. They were intimidating, overwhelming, and utterly unstoppable by any standard the Kryneth knew. Still, no response came from Earth. "Hi, Commander," the tactical officer said. "We are detecting some activity on the planet's surface. Multiple energy signatures activating. It appears to be military installations powering up." "They mean to fight," Prexcal said, almost amused. "Very well. Target one of their cities with a precision strike. Nothing that will cause significant casualties, just enough to demonstrate our capabilities. Choose a coastal settlement, away from major population centers." The Inevitable Conquest's main plasma cannon began charging. It would take approximately 30 seconds to reach full power, then discharge a bolt of superheated matter that would vaporize everything within a 5-kilometer radius. A clear demonstration of power that would surely convince the humans of their foolishness. 20 seconds into the charging sequence, the tactical officer shouted, "Incoming projectiles! Multiple signatures, high-velocity, origin point asteroid belt." "Shields to maximum," Rexcal ordered calmly. Whatever primitive weapons the humans had developed would be useless against Cranith's shields. The projectiles struck 3 seconds later. They were simple tungsten rods, 30 meters long and 2 meters in diameter, accelerated to 20% of light speed by hidden railgun installations in the asteroid belt. They had no explosives, no warheads, no complex technology. They were just very heavy objects moving very fast. The shields of the 3 ships they hit did exactly nothing. Energy barriers designed to dissipate plasma and deflect particle beams could not stop solid matter with that much kinetic energy. The tungsten rods punched through the shields as if they did not exist, piercing the Cranith armor like paper, and emerging from the far side of the ships in sprays of debris and atmosphere. Admiral Marcus Drake stood in the command center of Earth Defense Command, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The message from his wife had arrived 6 days ago, compressed into a data burst that had taken their best cryptographers hours to decode. Now, with 8 days until the alien fleet arrived, every military installation on Earth and throughout the solar system was preparing for war. Marcus was a career military officer, 52 years old, with gray hair and steady hands that had commanded fleets through dozens of simulations. But those had all been against human opponents, human tactics, human thinking. Now he faced an enemy that considered humans too primitive to even fight properly. That was their first mistake. "Report," Marcus said, studying the holographic display that showed the entire solar system. Commander Patricia Wells stepped forward. She was 35, brilliant, and had been advocating for aggressive defense strategy since Earth first achieved FTL travel. "All military assets are positioned. We have the 3rd Fleet holding at Mars orbit. The 7th Fleet is scattered among the asteroid belt, powered down and waiting. Our stealth satellites are positioned throughout the outer solar system. Every ship capable of mounting weapons has been retrofitted. The civilian population is being moved to underground shelters." "How many ships do we have that can fight?" Marcus asked, though he knew the answer would not be encouraging. 42 combat-ready vessels," Patricia replied. "Another 20 support ships that we've armed with whatever we could mount. The civilian freighters are being loaded with kinetic payloads. We have 16 orbital defense platforms around Earth, 3 around Mars. The lunar base has been fortified with surface-to-space missiles." Marcus nodded slowly. Against 50 alien warships with superior technology, it should have been hopeless. But Marcus had spent the last 6 days studying everything Sarah had sent. Every detail about the Cranith, every scrap of information about the Galactic Council. And he had found something interesting. The aliens had been fighting the same way for millions of years. Their tactics were refined, efficient, and completely predictable. They had never faced an opponent who thought differently than they did. They had never fought humans. "They will arrive at the edge of our solar system and broadcast their surrender demand," Marcus said, pointing to the holographic display. "They will expect us to either surrender immediately or make a token resistance before surrendering. They have energy shields designed to stop plasma weapons. They have never encountered kinetic weapons at relativistic speeds." "Our railguns," Patricia said, understanding immediately. "Exactly. Every ship, every platform, every installation is equipped with them. Simple technology. Just accelerate a solid projectile to a significant fraction of light speed and let physics do the rest. Their shields might stop energy, but they were not designed for solid matter moving at 0.2 C. Another officer spoke up, Lieutenant Commander Jiang Wei. "Sir, even if our weapons are effective, we are still outnumbered and outgunned. Their ships are larger, faster, and have been fighting wars for thousands of years. That's their second mistake, Marcus said. They assume we think like them. They assume we will fight a conventional battle, formation against formation, honor and tactics, and all the things they have refined over millennia. We are not going to do that. He gestured, and the holographic display changed, showing a battle plan that made several officers gasp. We are going to fight like humans, Marcus continued. We are going to cheat, lie, ambush, and do every dirty trick we have learned from 10,000 years of killing each other. We are going to show them what happens when you underestimate a Death World species. The plan was insane. It violated every principle of space warfare that the military academies taught. It relied on deception, sacrifice, and a willingness to accept losses that no rational commander would consider. It was perfect. 8 days later, the Kryneth fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system. High Commander Vrexkal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Inevitable Conquest, and surveyed the primitive star system before him. One yellow star, several rocky planets, some gas giants, the standard arrangement. The third planet from the star was their target, a blue-green world that sensors showed was teeming with life. Begin the standard protocol, Vrexkal ordered. Broadcast the surrender demand in their primary languages. Display our full fleet formation. Let them see what they face. The communications officer complied. The message was simple and had been used thousands of times before. Inhabitants of Earth, you are hereby notified that your planet has been designated for integration into the Galactic Council as a servant species. Surrender your military forces immediately. Comply with all instructions from Council representatives. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. You have 1 standard hour to respond. Vrexkal settled into his command throne and waited. Typically, primitive species responded within minutes, either with immediate surrender or with confused questions. Very few chose to resist, and those who did usually collapsed after a single demonstration of superior firepower. 30 minutes passed. No response came. Communications, verify the message was received, Vrexkal ordered. Confirmed, High Commander. Multiple listening posts on the third planet received our broadcast. They are capable of responding but have chosen not to. Vrexkal's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Perhaps they do not understand the gravity of their situation. Move the fleet to inner system. Take a position above their largest moon. Let them see our ships up close. The 50 Kryneth warships activated their FTL drives and jumped deeper into the solar system, emerging in orbit around Earth's moon. Each ship was a kilometer long, bristling with plasma cannons and protected by energy shields that had never failed in combat. They were intimidating, overwhelming, and utterly unstoppable by any standard the Kryneth knew. Still, no response came from Earth. High Commander, the tactical officer said, we are detecting some activity on the planet's surface. Multiple energy signatures activating. It appears to be military installations powering up. They mean to fight, Vrexkal said, almost amused. Very well. Target one of their cities with a precision strike. Nothing that will cause significant casualties. Just enough to demonstrate our capabilities. Choose a coastal settlement, away from major population centers. The Inevitable Conquest's main plasma cannon began charging. It would take approximately 30 seconds to reach full power, then discharge a bolt of superheated matter that would vaporize everything within a 5-kilometer radius. A clear demonstration of power that would surely convince the humans of their foolishness. 20 seconds into the charging sequence, the tactical officer shouted, "Incoming projectiles! Multiple signatures, high-velocity, origin point asteroid belt. Shields to maximum," Vrexkal ordered calmly. Whatever primitive weapons the humans had developed would be useless against Kryneth shields. The projectiles struck 3 seconds later. They were simple tungsten rods, 30 meters long and 2 meters in diameter, accelerated to 20% of light speed by hidden railgun installations in the asteroid belt. They had no explosives, no warheads, no complex technology. They were just very heavy objects moving very fast. The shields of the 3 ships they hit did exactly nothing. Energy barriers designed to dissipate plasma and deflect particle beams could not stop solid matter with that much kinetic energy. The tungsten rods punched through the shields as if they did not exist, piercing the Kryneth armor like paper, and emerging from the far side of the ships in sprays of debris and atmosphere. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been running for 3 days without pause. In the grand chamber where thousands of species gathered to govern the galaxy, chaos had replaced the usual orderly proceedings. Representatives shouted, argued, and demanded explanations. The holographic displays showed the same footage again and again. Kryneth warships, the pride of a civilization that had conquered 17 species, exploding under human weapons fire. Chancellor Morathan floated at the center of it all, his gaseous form shifting through colors that indicated deep distress. He had governed the council for over 2,000 years, and never had he witnessed such disruption to the established order. "This cannot stand," bellowed Ambassador Threx of the Korthan Empire. The Korthan resembled massive crustaceans with shells that could survive in the vacuum of space. "A servant species candidate has destroyed a council-sanctioned military operation. If we allow this to go unpunished, every subjugated species in the galaxy will see it as permission to rebel." The humans were defending their homeworld, countered Representative Silth of the Meridian Collective. The Meridians were silicon-based lifeforms who communicated through precisely controlled electrical pulses. Perhaps if High Commander Vrexkal had approached with diplomacy rather than threats, this tragedy could have been avoided. Tragedy? Vrexkal's voice cut through the chamber. He had arrived that morning, still wearing his damaged armor, his pride as wounded as his fleet. "The tragedy is that the Council sent me to deal with a threat we did not understand. These humans are not weak. They are not primitive. They are a Deathworld species with thousands of years of warfare experience. They fight like demons, without honor, without restraint, and without fear of death." "You are making excuses for your failure," Ambassador Threx said coldly. "I am trying to save lives," Vrexkal shot back. "If the Council sends another fleet to Earth without understanding what we face, more ships will burn. These humans use weapons we have never encountered. They employ tactics that violate every principle of civilized warfare. They set traps, they ambush, they sacrifice their own without hesitation. They are everything the Council was designed to protect against." In the observation gallery above the main chamber, Dr. Kelthar watched the proceedings with growing frustration. He had tried to warn them. He had submitted 17 reports about human psychology, human history, and human behavior. They had all been ignored because they contradicted what the Council wanted to believe. Now his predictions were coming true, and the Council was still refusing to see the truth. Kelthar made a decision that would change his life forever. He activated his personal communication device and sent a message to every major news network in the galaxy. Then he walked down to the chamber floor and requested permission to speak. Chancellor Morathan regarded him with what might have been suspicion. "Dr. Kelthar, your expertise in xenopsychology is respected, but this is a military and political matter, not a scientific one." "With respect, Chancellor, this is exactly a scientific matter," Kelthar replied. "The Council has made decisions based on incomplete data and flawed assumptions. I request permission to present my findings on humanity to the full Council. Your findings are in your reports, which we have all read," Ambassador Threx said dismissively. "My reports were submitted to the Evaluation Committee and summarized for the Council," Kelthar said. "I do not believe the summaries adequately conveyed the critical information. I request 30 minutes to present my full analysis. If after that time the Council still wishes to proceed with military action against Earth, I will resign my position and never speak of this matter again." Chancellor Morathan considered this. The chamber had grown quiet, all attention focused on the small reptilian scientist who stood alone on the floor. "Very well. You have 30 minutes. Kelthar activated the chamber's holographic systems and began his presentation. "I have studied over 300 sentient species during my career. I have analyzed their psychology, their evolution, their cultures, and their potential threats to galactic stability. Humans are the most dangerous species I have ever encountered, not despite their weaknesses, but because of them." The holographic display showed Earth rotating slowly in space. This is a Class 12 death world. To put that in perspective, the Kryneth homeworld is Class 3, the Korthan homeworld is Class 5. Most Council species evolved on worlds, rated Class 1 or 2. Class 12 means the planet is actively trying to kill its inhabitants at all times. The display zoomed in, showing hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and predators. Humans evolved alongside megafauna that could kill them with ease. They developed no natural weapons, no armor, no venom. They survived through intelligence, cooperation, and something I have termed persistence adaptation. They simply refused to die. "All species have survival instincts," Ambassador Threx interjected. "Not like this," Kelthar said. He brought up new footage, videos from Earth's history that his researchers had compiled. This is the human battle of Stalingrad. Over 2 million casualties in a single city. They fought for months in freezing temperatures with limited supplies. Any rational species would have surrendered. Humans fought until they won. More images appeared. This is the human island of Iwo Jima. 20,000 defenders, 70,000 attackers. The defenders knew they would die. They fought anyway, every single one, for 36 days. This is human naval warfare, where they built metal ships to sink each other in oceans that cover 70% of their planet. This is human aerial combat, where they built machines to fight each other in the sky. This is human space warfare, where they practiced destroying each other in orbit before they ever met another species. The council chamber was completely silent now. The images kept coming, a horrifying parade of human ingenuity applied to human destruction. Humans have been at war for their entire recorded history, Kelthar continued. They have developed thousands of ways to kill each other. Biological weapons, chemical weapons, nuclear weapons. They created devices capable of ending all life on their planet, and they chose not to use them. Do you understand what that means? They have restraint. They have morality. But when those restraints are removed, when they believe they are fighting for survival, they become something that should terrify every species in this galaxy. He brought up the footage from the Battle of Earth's solar system. Watch how they fight. No formation, no honor, no hesitation. They ambush from hiding. They use weapons we never anticipated. They sacrifice their own ships and crews without pause. This is not the behavior of a weak species. This is the behavior of a species that learned survival from the universe's harshest teacher, a planet that tried to kill them every single day. Chancellor Morathan spoke, his voice thoughtful. Even if everything you say is true, they are still one species on one planet. The Council commands thousands of species across millions of worlds. Their defiance, while impressive, cannot be allowed to stand. That is my point exactly, Kelthar said urgently. It is not about one species or one planet. It is about what happens next. Every subjugated species in the galaxy is watching this. For millions of years, the Council has maintained order through the threat of overwhelming force. We told weaker species that resistance was futile, and they believed us because they had no evidence to the contrary. Now they have evidence. Humans prove that a determined species can resist. What happens when others try? The implications hung in the air like a physical presence. The Galactic Council controlled approximately 3,000 species. Of those, nearly 1,000 were classified as servant species. If even 10% decided to rebel, inspired by humanity's example, the galaxy would descend into chaos. You are suggesting we simply allow the humans their independence? Ambassador Threx asked, his tone making clear what he thought of that idea. I am suggesting we offer them a choice, Kelthar replied. Not servitude or conquest, but genuine partnership. Bring Ambassador Chen before the Council. Negotiate in good faith. Show the galaxy that the Council can adapt, can recognize when it has made a mistake, and can correct that mistake with wisdom rather than force. And if they refuse? If they demand concessions we cannot grant? Chancellor Morathan asked. Then we will face a war unlike any in galactic history, Kelthar said simply, because humans will fight until they are extinct, and they will take as many of us with them as they possibly can. They will never surrender. It is not in their nature. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some species supported Kelthar's recommendation. Others demanded immediate military retaliation. The arguments raged for hours, broadcast across the galaxy through the news networks that Kelthar had tipped off. On 1,700 worlds, in species that had been serving the council for thousands of years, beings watched the debates and began to think dangerous thoughts. If humans could resist, perhaps they could too. If the council could be wrong about humans, what else had they been wrong about? On the council station, Ambassador Sarah Chen was brought from her cell for the first time in weeks. She was escorted not to an interrogation room but to a diplomatic suite with proper quarters, food, and communication equipment. A written message waited for her. Dr. Kelthar has opened a door for us, it read. The council is divided. Some want peace. Others want war. We have a chance to negotiate, but we must be careful. Whatever demands you make must be reasonable enough to accept, but strong enough to protect humanity's future. You are about to determine the fate of our entire species. No pressure. Admiral Drake, Sarah sat down and began to think. She had been a diplomat for 20 years, had negotiated treaties between nations, corporations, and political factions, but never had the stakes been this high. One wrong word could trigger a war that would destroy Earth. One moment of weakness could condemn humanity to slavery. She thought about what made humans unique, not their weapons or their tactics or their ability to survive harsh conditions. Those were tools, symptoms of something deeper. What made humans special was their refusal to accept fate as inevitable. When the universe said humans were weak, they became strong. When their planet tried to kill them, they conquered it. When the galaxy told them to serve, they said no. That was the message she needed to convey. Not aggression or defiance, but dignity. Humanity deserved respect not because they had won a battle, but because every sentient species deserved respect. 3 days later, Sarah Chen stood before the Galactic Council once again. This time she wore her uniform with pride rather than hope. This time she was not a supplicant requesting permission to exist. She was an ambassador representing a free people who had proven they would rather die than kneel. "Members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice clear and steady. "I come before you not to apologize for defending our world, but to extend an opportunity for peace. Humanity recognizes that we are new to the galactic community. We acknowledge that we have much to learn, but we will learn as equals, not as servants." "You presume much for a species that nearly lost a war against one fleet," Ambassador Threx said. "We did not lose," Sarah replied calmly. "We won. Your fleet came to conquer us. Your fleet was defeated. That is the reality of the situation, regardless of how uncomfortable it makes you." "You lost nearly half your forces," Threx countered, "and we would have lost them all if necessary," Sarah said. "That is what you do not understand. Humans measure victory not by casualties but by objectives. Our objective was to remain free. We achieved that objective. We are prepared to achieve it again if necessary, and the cost will be far higher next time because we have learned from the first battle. We have studied Kryneth technology. We have analyzed your tactics. We will not be surprised again." Chancellor Morathan spoke, his tone less hostile than before. "What exactly do you want, Ambassador Chen?" "Full council membership with all rights and protections," Sarah said immediately. "Recognition of human sovereignty over our solar system and any colonies we establish. The right to maintain our own military forces. The right to refuse any council directive that conflicts with human values. In exchange, humanity will share its knowledge, contribute to galactic science and culture, and defend council interests when those interests align with our own. Those are the rights of a major council species," Ambassador Threx protested. "Rights that are earned over millennia of service and contribution." "We have earned them," Sarah said quietly. "We earned them by surviving on a death world. We earned them by achieving spaceflight without outside help. We earned them by defeating a subjugation fleet that had never lost before. What more do you require us to prove?" The council debated for 2 more days. In the end, the vote was closer than anyone expected. The motion passed by a narrow margin. Humanity would be granted probationary council membership, with full rights to be reviewed in 50 years. It was not everything Sarah had asked for, but it was enough. Humanity was free. The message was clear to every species in the galaxy. The old order was changing, and at the heart of that change was a simple truth that had been forgotten over millions of years of council dominance. Every species, no matter how weak they appeared, had the right to be free. On Earth, celebrations erupted across every continent. Humanity had taken its first steps into a larger galaxy, and had done so on their own terms. But in the darker corners of known space, other forces were watching and planning. The Council's weakness had been exposed. The Kryneth had been humiliated. And somewhere in the vast dark between stars, something that had been sleeping for millions of years had noticed the disturbance and was beginning to wake. The galaxy was about to get much more interesting. 6 months had passed since the Council granted humanity probationary membership. In that time, Earth had changed in ways nobody could have predicted. The captured Kryneth technology had been reverse-engineered, combined with human innovation, and deployed across the entire solar system. New ships rolled out of orbital shipyards at a pace that shocked galactic observers. Human engineers had taken alien shield technology and improved it, creating hybrid systems that combined energy barriers with reactive armor plating. But the real change was happening far from Earth. 7 species had secretly approached human diplomats with a proposal that would reshape the galaxy. They called themselves the Free People's Coalition, And they wanted what humanity had: freedom. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in a secure conference room on the moon, looking at holographic representations of the 7 species who had reached out. She recognized some of them from the council chamber. Others were new to her, species who had been serving the council for so long that most of the galaxy had forgotten they were once independent. The first to speak was Ambassador Kresh of the Yalveth, a species that looked like crystalline humanoids. Their bodies refracted light in beautiful patterns, but their voices carried the weight of 8,000 years of servitude. Ambassador Chen, my people served the council for millennia before earning independence. We know what you face. The council will test you, challenge you, and try to find any excuse to revoke your freedom. They fear what you represent. What do we represent? Sarah asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Hope, said the second representative, a being called Tom from the Salvix communes. The Salvix resembled large amphibians with 6 limbs and highly adaptable biology. For millions of years, the council has told us that might makes right, that the strong deserve to rule the weak. You proved that wrong. You showed the galaxy that determination and courage can overcome raw power. The third representative was from the Karathi, a species of insectoid beings smaller than the Kryneth but far more numerous. Their ambassador Zixthar spoke with urgency. The council is fracturing. Frexkul and the Kryneth are gathering allies, species who believe the old ways must be maintained at any cost. They are building a fleet far larger than the one that attacked Earth. They will not make the same mistakes twice. Sarah felt her heart sink. They had barely survived the first attack. A second, larger fleet with tactics adapted to counter human strategies would be much harder to defeat. How large a fleet? 300 warships, Zixthar said. And they are recruiting mercenary species, promising them shares of Earth's resources after your conquest. The council officially knows nothing about this, but several members are quietly supporting it. They want you destroyed as an example. 300 ships. Sarah said the number quietly, tasting its weight. Earth might have 60 combat-capable vessels now, along with improved defenses, but 300 was impossible odds. When will they attack? Soon, Kresh answered. Within the next 2 months. But Ambassador Chen, we did not come here only to warn you. We came to propose an alliance. The 7 species in this room represent over 400 worlds and approximately 1,000 starships. We are not warriors like the Kryneth, but we are tired of being told we exist only to serve others. We want to stand with humanity. We want to show the galaxy that the old order is ending. Sarah looked at each representative in turn. They were scared, she could see that. They were risking everything on the hope that humans could somehow defeat a force designed specifically to destroy them. It was insane. It was desperate. It was exactly what humanity would do. If we do this, Sarah said slowly, if we form this coalition, the council will see it as rebellion. They will try to crush us all. The Kryneth will make Earth their primary target, but they will not stop there. They will destroy every world that sides with us. Can your people accept that risk? Our people are already at risk, Tom replied. The council maintains order through fear. They have made examples of species who stepped out of line. The Nethran people questioned a council directive 50 years ago. Their homeworld was blockaded for a decade. Millions died. We are already living under threat. At least this way we choose our fate. Sarah made her decision. Then we stand together. The Free People's Coalition. We will need to share technology, coordinate defenses, and plan for a war that none of us want, but all of us will fight if necessary. The 7 species agreed immediately. Over the next week, secret meetings took place across dozens of worlds. Human military advisors traveled to coalition systems, teaching the tactics that had defeated Vrexical's first fleet. Coalition engineers shared their own innovations, technologies developed under council rule but never fully exploited. Slowly, an alliance was forming that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Meanwhile, in the Kryneth Empire's capital system, High Commander Vrexcal stood before a gathering of over 40 species representatives. These were the militaristic factions, species who believed in the council's original purpose, maintaining order through strength. They were not the majority of the council, but they were the most heavily armed. The humans humiliated us, Vrexcal said, his voice amplified across the vast chamber. But more than that, they exposed a weakness in the galactic order. If we allow them to maintain their independence, others will follow. Already we have detected suspicious communications between human representatives and several servant species. The infection is spreading. What do you propose? Asked General Korath of the Dranis Supremacy, a species of reptilian warriors who controlled over 100 systems through military might. Total war, Rexkal said simply. Not a subjugation force, but an extermination fleet. We will make Earth an example that will echo through the galaxy for 1,000,000 years. Any species that considers rebellion will remember what happened to the humans who dared defy the natural order. The Council will never approve genocide, said another representative, though his tone suggested he wished otherwise. The Council does not need to know until it is done, Rexkal replied. We will frame it as a necessary response to human aggression. We have evidence that humans have been secretly arming other species, spreading dangerous technology and encouraging rebellion. All of this is true, by the way. The humans are doing exactly what we predicted they would do. Over the next 6 weeks, the Krynith amassed their fleet, 300 warships, the largest military force assembled in over 10,000 years. They trained specifically to counter human tactics, drilling endlessly on how to detect ambushes, counter kinetic weapons, and maintain formation under chaotic conditions. They studied every second of footage from the first battle, analyzing human behavior, looking for patterns and weaknesses. They would not be surprised again. They would not underestimate the enemy. They would arrive in overwhelming force, destroy every human military asset, and then systematically burn every major city on Earth until the survivors begged for mercy that would not come. The fleet departed in secret, using obscure jump routes to avoid Council patrols. Their destination, a human colony world called New Vancouver, home to 2 million people and a significant military presence. It would be the perfect target for their opening strike, far enough from Earth that help could not arrive in time, but important enough that its destruction would devastate human morale. On New Vancouver, Colonel James Warren received the warning with 30 hours' notice. The Free People's Coalition had spies throughout the Krynith Empire, and they had detected the fleet's departure. 30 hours was not much time, but it was enough for what Warren had planned. Begin evacuation procedures, he ordered. Priority 1, children, elderly, and non-military personnel. Get them on every ship we have and send them toward Earth. Priority 2, arm every defensive platform, activate every mine, and prepare every trap we have been building for the past 4 months. His staff looked at him with understanding. New Vancouver had not been just a colony. It had been a military project, a carefully designed trap built specifically for this moment. The Council thought humans had been scrambling to defend Earth. They had no idea that humanity had been playing a much longer game. The city itself had been constructed with war in mind. Every building had reinforced foundations that concealed weapon systems. The orbital defense platforms were 3 times more numerous than sensors would detect, with 2/3 of them powered down and invisible. The asteroid belt around New Vancouver's star contained not mining operations, but the largest concentration of railgun platforms humanity had ever built. Most importantly, the colony's population knew what was coming. They had volunteered for this, knowing they would be the bait that drew the Krynith fleet into position. Evacuation ships launched continuously, carrying civilians to safety while military personnel stayed behind, preparing to give the Krynith a reception they would never forget. The Krynith fleet arrived exactly on schedule, dropping out of FTL at the edge of the system in perfect formation, 300 warships, each one a mobile fortress capable of destroying cities. It was beautiful in a terrible way, the most powerful military force the galaxy had seen in recorded history. High Commander Rexkal stood on his bridge and surveyed the human colony world on his screens. It looked peaceful, almost inviting. A blue-green planet with one large continent and several smaller islands. Orbital platforms surrounded it, but they were pitifully few. No fleet waited to defend it. The humans had apparently decided not to waste military resources on an indefensible position. This will be easier than I thought, Rexkal said. Begin the attack. I want that planet burning within the hour. The Krynith fleet advanced in 3 waves, maintaining careful spacing and defensive formation. They had learned from their first defeat. No single point of attack could cripple them now. Their shields were reinforced against kinetic weapons. Their sensors were tuned to detect hidden platforms. They were ready for anything the humans could throw at them. They were not ready for what actually happened. The humans did not ambush them from hiding. They did not sneak attack with relativistic projectiles. Instead, every defensive platform in orbit powered up simultaneously and opened fire with everything they had. It was not a clever trap. It was not a sophisticated strategy. It was just raw, overwhelming firepower concentrated on the fleet's leading edge. The Kryneth shields held as expected. Their armor absorbed the hits. Their formation remained intact. They continued their advance, returning fire and destroying the orbital platforms one by one. Then the platforms exploded, all of them at once in a coordinated detonation that turned every defensive platform into a massive fragmentation bomb. Shrapnel filled the space around the fleet. Small pieces of metal that individually could not threaten a warship, but collectively created a cloud of debris that shredded sensors, damaged exterior equipment, and forced the fleet to slow its advance. Clever, Rexcal admitted, but futile. Continue advance, prepare orbital bombardment. That was when the real attack began. From the surface of New Vancouver, hundreds of missiles launched. Not complex guided weapons, just simple rockets with chemical engines and kinetic warheads. The kind of technology humans had been using for 400 years. They rose through the atmosphere in waves, cheap and expendable. The Kryneth point defense systems engaged, shooting down missile after missile. It was almost boring. Target practice against primitive weapons that posed no real threat. The missiles were not the threat. They were the distraction. While the Kryneth fleet focused on the obvious targets, watching the sky below them, they failed to notice the real danger approaching from the asteroid belt behind them. 60 human ships, led by Admiral Marcus Drake himself, had been hiding in the belt for 3 days, powered down and invisible. The Free People's Coalition had sent another 100 ships to reinforce them, species who had never fought a real war before but were willing to learn. They had been training in secret for months, learning human tactics, adapting their own ships to carry human weapons. They attacked now, emerging from their hiding spots and accelerating to attack speed. The Coalition ships hung back, providing supporting fire while staying out of range. The human ships dove straight into the Kryneth formation like sharks attacking from below. Ambush. Rexcal roared. All ships, defensive formation. Do not break ranks. But the humans had no intention of letting them maintain formation. 60 ships split into 20 groups of 3, each group targeting a different section of the Kryneth fleet. They did not try to destroy ships directly. Instead, they targeted command and control, communications arrays, sensor clusters. They wanted chaos. They got it. The Kryneth fleet had trained to maintain formation, to support each other, to operate as a coordinated force. Human tactics were specifically designed to prevent coordination. Ship-to-ship communications became difficult. Sensor data became unreliable. Formation became impossible to maintain as individual ships lost track of their neighbors. Within 10 minutes, the organized Kryneth fleet had dissolved into dozens of smaller groups, each fighting its own individual battle. And in individual battles against human opponents who had been fighting each other for thousands of years, the Kryneth were outmatched. Admiral Drake commanded from his ship, the UES Retribution, watching the battle unfold exactly as planned. All Coalition forces, now is your time. Pick your targets. Fight smart. Remember your training. The Coalition ships, emboldened by the chaos, joined the fight. They were not as skilled as human pilots, but they did not need to be. Against disorganized opponents, even mediocre tactics could succeed. Salvix ships used their electronic warfare capabilities to jam Kryneth communications. Yalveth vessels, with their crystalline hulls, proved surprisingly resistant to plasma fire. Karathi fighters swarmed larger ships too numerous and too small to target effectively. On the surface of New Vancouver, Colonel Warren watched the battle through relay satellites and allowed himself a grim smile. The evacuation was 90% complete. Most of the civilians were gone. The military personnel who remained were volunteers who understood the risk. It was time for the final move. Activate Protocol Scorched Earth, Warren ordered. Across the planet, carefully placed demolition charges began to detonate. Not the messy, destructive kind designed to kill, but precise-shaped charges that destroyed infrastructure without causing massive casualties. Spaceports, power plants, communication hubs, anything of strategic value was systematically demolished. Within 30 minutes, New Vancouver went from a prosperous colony to a worthless rock. High Commander Vrexcal watched in horror as his perfect plan collapsed. His fleet was scattered. His enemies were everywhere. And the prize he had come to take was being destroyed before his eyes. "They are insane," he whispered. They are destroying their own world rather than let us take it. Should we retreat? His tactical officer asked. Vrexkal looked at the battle display. 57 Krynith ships were gone. Another 100 were damaged. The humans had lost 20 ships. The coalition had lost 30. By traditional metrics, it was still a Krynith victory. But Vrexkal knew the truth. He had brought 300 ships to crush one human colony. He had been fought to a standstill by 60 human ships and 100 coalition vessels. His fleet was broken, his tactics countered, his reputation shattered again. And somewhere out there, humanity's main fleet waited near Earth, learning from this battle, preparing for the next encounter. Sound retreat, Vrexkal ordered quietly. Tell all ships to disengage and retreat to Rally Point Alpha. We have lost. As the Krynith fleet retreated, battered and humiliated for the second time, Admiral Marcus Drake received casualty reports. 2,300 human military personnel dead, 17,000 coalition casualties, heavy losses by any measure, but they had won. Against a fleet 3 times their size prepared specifically to counter their tactics, they had won. The Free People's Coalition had proven itself in battle. Humanity had proven that their first victory was not luck. The galaxy watched the footage of the battle and realized something that would change everything. The Council was no longer invincible, and humanity was no longer alone. The Galactic Council chamber had never been this full. Every species, from the most powerful to the smallest servant race, had sent representatives. The news of the Battle of New Vancouver had spread across the galaxy in days, carried by news networks, whispered in back channels, and debated in every corner of civilized space. The impossible had happened twice now. The Krynith, the Council's most fearsome military force, had been defeated by humans and their allies. The political implications were staggering. 17 more species had secretly joined the Free People's Coalition in the weeks following the battle. Another 30 were considering it. The old order, maintained for millions of years through the threat of overwhelming force, was crumbling. Chancellor Morathan floated in the center of the chaos, his gaseous form cycling through colors that indicated stress beyond anything in his long life. For 2,000 years he had maintained galactic peace through careful balance, diplomatic pressure, and, when necessary, military intervention. Now that balance was shattered and he did not know how to rebuild it. High Commander Vrexkal stood before the Council, stripped of his rank and his honor. He had been summoned to explain his second defeat, to account for the loss of over 100 ships and thousands of Krynith lives. His armor was dull, his posture defeated. He looked like what he was, a commander who had failed twice against an enemy he did not understand. You exceeded your authority, Chancellor Morathan said, his voice filling every mind in the chamber. You assembled a fleet for unauthorized military action. You attacked a human colony without Council approval. You started a war that now threatens to tear the galaxy apart. What do you have to say for yourself? Vrexkal looked up and for the first time in his life spoke with complete honesty. I was wrong. Not about the threat humans represent, but about how to address it. I saw them as weak because they lacked natural weapons. I saw them as primitive because their technology was less advanced. I did not see what Dr. Kelthar tried to show us. Humans are dangerous precisely because they are weak. They had to become clever to survive. They had to become ruthless to thrive. They had to become adaptable to conquer their own planet. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes or sensors or whatever organs the various species used to observe the world. Every species in this chamber evolved to fit their environment. We adapted to our worlds. Humans adapted their world to fit them. That is the difference. That is what makes them unique. And that is why traditional military force will never defeat them. So what do you suggest? Ambassador Threx demanded. That we simply accept this rebellion? Allow the Free People's Coalition to exist in defiance of Council authority? I suggest we negotiate, Vrexkal said quietly. I suggest we recognize that the galaxy has changed, and we must change with it or be swept away by forces we cannot control. The chamber erupted in arguments. Species who had served the Council for millennia demanded action, punishment, an example to restore order. Newer species, those who remembered independence, called for reform. The servant species, emboldened by humanity's example, demanded freedom. In the middle of this chaos, Dr. Kelthar rose to speak. His credentials as a xenopsychologist gave him authority few could challenge. Members of the Council, we face a choice that will define the next million years of galactic history. We can try to maintain the old order through force, which will lead to a war that will devastate countless worlds and potentially destroy the Council itself. Or we can adapt. We can recognize that the principles on which the Council was founded, principles of cooperation and mutual benefit, have been corrupted over time into systems of control and exploitation. You speak of principles, Ambassador Threx said coldly, but principles do not maintain order. Strength maintains order. Then explain to me, Kelthar replied, how strength failed twice against humans. Explain how the most powerful military force we could assemble was defeated by a species you claimed was weak. Strength alone is not enough. It never was. We maintained order because weaker species believed resistance was impossible. Humans proved it was possible. That belief cannot be unproven. The galaxy has changed permanently. Chancellor Morathan raised his voice, a gesture that commanded silence. Dr. Kelthar is correct. We cannot undo what has happened. We can only decide how to move forward. I propose we invite Ambassador Chen and representatives of the Free People's Coalition to these chambers for formal negotiations. Not as supplicants, but as equals. The vote was contentious, but it passed. The Council, for the first time in recorded history, had voted to negotiate with those who had defied its authority. 3 weeks later, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the Council chamber once more. This time she was not alone. Beside her stood representatives from 24 species, the full membership of the Free People's Coalition. Behind them, visible through the chamber's view screens, waited a combined fleet of over 1,500 ships. Not a threat, but a clear statement. The Coalition had power, and it would use that power to protect its freedom. Sarah stepped forward. She had prepared this speech for weeks, working with diplomats from a dozen species, incorporating perspectives she had never imagined before meeting these people. Chancellor Morathan, members of the Galactic Council, we come before you not as rebels or enemies, but as partners in building a better galaxy. You come before us after destroying Council ships and defying Council authority. Ambassador Threx interjected. We defended ourselves, Sarah replied calmly. The Kryneth attacked us twice. We responded with the minimum force necessary to ensure our survival. We did not attack Council territory. We did not threaten Council species who were not threatening us. We simply refused to become slaves. She gestured to the representatives beside her. The species standing with me today represent billions of beings who share a simple belief. Freedom is not a privilege to be granted by the powerful. It is a right inherent to all sentient life. For too long, the Council has decided which species deserve freedom and which must serve. We are here to say that system ends today. And if we refuse, asked General Korath of the Draenus Supremacy, then you will face a war you cannot win, said Admiral Marcus Drake, appearing via hologram. He stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance with the combined human coalition fleet arrayed behind him. The Free People's Coalition now controls over 400 worlds. We have access to resources you depend on. We have populations that will fight to the last rather than return to servitude. And we have something you have forgotten, a cause worth dying for. You threaten us? Ambassador Threx's voice was incredulous. We inform you, Marcus replied. The Council can choose peace or war. If you choose peace, the Coalition offers full cooperation on matters of mutual interest, trade agreements, cultural exchange, and mutual defense against external threats. If you choose war, you will spend decades fighting a guerrilla campaign across hundreds of systems while your own servant species watch and wonder why they should not join. Us, Chancellor Morathan studied the humans and their allies carefully. He was ancient even by the standards of long-lived species. He had seen empires rise and fall. He understood that some forces could not be stopped, only guided. What exactly do you propose? Sarah activated a holographic display that showed a new organizational structure. We propose a reformed Galactic Council based on principles of representation and consent. All species, regardless of size or military power, have an equal voice. No species can be compelled to serve another. Council decisions require majority vote, with protections for minority species. Military force can only be used defensively or with unanimous consent. You would dismantle everything we have built over millions of years, Threx said. No, Sarah replied. We would fulfill the promise the Council was supposed to represent. According to your own historical records, the Council was founded to promote peace, cooperation, and mutual advancement. Somewhere along the way, it became a tool for the strong to dominate the weak. We are simply proposing a return to first principles. The debate lasted for 3 days. Species argued, negotiated, and made deals. The militaristic factions wanted war but could not muster enough support. The servant species, watching everything on broadcasts across the galaxy, began making their own demands. Several announced they would join the coalition regardless of the Council's decision. In the end, the vote came down to Chancellor Morathan himself. As the Council's leader, he could force a continuation of the old system or he could embrace change. He thought about his 2,000 years of service, about all the species he had seen subjugated for their own good, about the peace he had maintained through threat and fear. "I vote for reform," he announced. "The ambassador is correct. We have strayed from our founding principles. It is time we return to them." The vote passed with a narrow majority. The Galactic Council would be reformed. Servant species would be freed, though with support and resources to help them transition to independence. The Free People's Coalition would be integrated into the new structure. Humanity would have a full seat on the Council, earned not through millennia of service but through proving their worth in the hardest way possible. There were species who refused to accept the decision. The Dranas supremacy withdrew from the Council, taking their hundreds of warships with them. Several other militaristic factions followed. They formed their own confederation, determined to maintain the old ways in their own territory. The galaxy was fragmenting, but it was fragmenting along lines of choice rather than compulsion. 5 years later, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, a new council facility built cooperatively by dozens of species. She was no longer just Earth's ambassador. She had been elected the first chancellor of the reformed Galactic Council, chosen by representatives from over 1,000 species. Beside her stood Dr. Kelthar, now her chief advisor. "Do you ever think about that first meeting?" he asked. "When Rexcal tried to make humanity a servant species?" "Every day," Sarah replied. "If we had surrendered then, none of this would exist. The old order would still stand and billions would still be serving others against their will." "You took an enormous risk," Kelthar observed. "We took the only choice we could live with," Sarah said. "Humans learned a long time ago that some things are worth fighting for. Freedom is one of them." On Earth, in a classroom in New Beijing, a teacher stood before a class of students. They were not all human. Some were Yalveth children, their crystalline bodies refracting the light. Others were young Salvics, their amphibian features curious and attentive. A few Karathi children, small insectoids who would grow much larger, sat in the back. "Today we are going to talk about the contact wars," the teacher said, "the period when humanity first joined the galactic community. Can anyone tell me why this period is important?" A human girl raised her hand. "Because we refuse to give up?" "That is part of it," the teacher agreed. "But it is more than that. The contact wars taught the galaxy an important lesson. Every sentient species has value. Every culture has something to contribute, and no one has the right to decide another species' fate." A Yalveth child spoke up, his voice like chimes. "My grandmother says humans saved us, that we were servants for 8,000 years until humans showed us we could be free." The teacher smiled. "Your grandmother is wise, but humans did not save you. They showed you how to save yourselves. That is an important difference. Humans proved that determination and courage matter more than size or strength or advanced technology. They proved that standing up for what is right, even when it seems impossible, can change the entire galaxy." A Salvix child raised one of her 6 limbs. "Teacher, is it true that humans come from a death world? That their planet tried to kill them?" "Yes, that is true," one of the teacher replied. "Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world. It has extreme weather, dangerous predators, and hostile environments. But humans did not let that stop them. They adapted. They learned. They survived. And when they reached the stars, they brought those lessons with them." "What lessons?" the human girl asked. "Never give up," the teacher said. "Never accept that something is impossible just because others say it is. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. Stand together because together we are stronger than apart." These are human values, but they have become galactic values now. The Reformed Council is built on these principles. In the military academy on Mars, another kind of lesson was taking place. Human Marines trained alongside coalition soldiers from 24 species. Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, a veteran of both the Solar System defense and the Battle of New Vancouver, stood before a mixed platoon of recruits. "Listen up," she barked. "I do not care what planet you come from. I do not care if you breathe oxygen, methane, or sulfur dioxide. I do not care if you have 2 legs, 6 legs, or no legs at all. In this unit, we are all equals. We all have one job: protect those who cannot protect themselves." She paced in front of them, her boots clicking on the metal deck. The galaxy is more dangerous now than it was 5 years ago. The Council has fractured. The Dranis supremacy controls hundreds of systems and refuses to recognize the reforms. Pirates and warlords are taking advantage of the chaos. New threats are emerging from unexplored space. We are the shield that stands between civilization and chaos. A young Karathi recruit raised a claw. "Sergeant, why should we fight for species we do not know? Why should we risk our lives for strangers?" Maria stopped and looked at the recruit with respect. It was a good question, one she had asked herself many times. Because someone has to. Because if we do not stand for others, who will stand for us when we need help? Because the galaxy is full of bullies who think might makes right, and someone needs to prove them wrong. That someone is us. She pointed to the human and coalition flags hanging on the wall. Humans learned something important during our history. We learned it through wars, through suffering, through millions of deaths. We learned that we are stronger together than apart. We learned that protecting others is not weakness, it is the highest form of strength. That is what we teach here. That is what we carry into every battle. Across the galaxy, the message was spreading. On former servant worlds, species who had been freed from council control were building their own civilizations, sometimes successfully, sometimes struggling, but always with support from the coalition. Human advisors helped establish governments. Coalition engineers helped build infrastructure. Teachers from dozen species shared knowledge freely. It was not perfect. There were conflicts, misunderstandings, and failures. Some freed species could not adapt to independence and requested to rejoin the old system. Some coalition worlds argued over resources and territory. The Dranis supremacy made aggressive moves along the border, testing coalition resolve. Pirates raided shipping lanes. Criminal syndicates flourished in the chaos, but overall the galaxy was better. More free, more diverse, more alive with possibility. On the bridge of the UES Retribution, Admiral Marcus Drake reviewed reports from across coalition space. He was older now, his hair completely gray, but his eyes remained sharp. He had been offered retirement a dozen times and refused every offer. There was still work to do. "Admiral, we are receiving a distress call from the Outer Rim," his communications officer reported. "A colony under attack by unknown forces. They are requesting immediate assistance." Marcus studied the tactical display. The colony was at the edge of explored space, far from major coalition forces. It would take days to get significant reinforcements there, but the colony had 20,000 inhabitants, including humans, Yalveth, Salvix, and 3 other species. They were coalition citizens. They deserved protection. "Plot a course," Marcus ordered. "Best speed. Contact the 3rd and 7th fleets. Tell them to rendezvous with us at the colony, and send a message to Chancellor Chen. Tell her we may have found our first contact with whatever has been lurking in the dark beyond our borders." The Retribution and her escort ships jumped to FTL, racing toward the distress call. Marcus knew they might be flying into a trap. He knew they might face enemies worse than anything they had encountered before. But that did not matter. Someone needed help, and the coalition answered when help was needed. That was what made them different. That was what made them strong. Back on Unity Station, Sarah Chen received the message and felt a chill run down her spine. The Outer Rim attacks had been increasing in frequency over the past year. Something was out there, something powerful and hostile. The Reformed Council had been so focused on internal matters that they had neglected the wider universe. She called an emergency session of the Council. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered, their attention focused on the holographic displays showing the attacks. Ships destroyed, colonies burned. No warnings, no demands, just violence. "We do not know who or what is attacking," Sarah said, "but we know this. The galaxy faces a threat that does not care about our politics or our reforms. This enemy attacks everyone equally. They do not distinguish between council species and coalition species. To them we are all the same prey. What do you propose?" asked Ambassador Kresh of the Yalveth. "Unity," Sarah replied. "Real unity. Not the forced compliance of the old council, but genuine cooperation. We need to combine our resources, share our intelligence, and prepare for the possibility that we are facing something worse than anything in recorded history. Across the chamber, even former opponents nodded in agreement. The Reformed Council had been born from conflict and disagreement, but now it faced an external threat that put everything into perspective. Species who had been enemies weeks ago now had to become allies. The humans have a saying, Sarah continued. United we stand, divided we fall. For millions of years, the galaxy was divided into the powerful and the powerless, the rulers and the servants. We have worked hard to change that. But our work is not done. Now we must prove that our new system, built on freedom and cooperation rather than fear and control, is strong enough to survive what is coming. The vote was unanimous. The Reformed Galactic Council would marshal its full resources to investigate and counter the threat from the Outer Rim. Human tactics would be taught to all willing species. Coalition military doctrine would become the standard. And most importantly, every species would have a voice in how to respond. On Earth, in a small apartment in Chicago, a young woman named Emma Drake watched the news broadcasts with her 5-year-old son. Emma was the daughter of Admiral Marcus Drake and Ambassador Sarah Chen, the child of 2 people who had helped reshape the galaxy. Mama, why do Grandpa and Grandma have to go far away? Her son asked. Emma pulled him close. Because there are people out there who need help. And your grandparents are the kind of people who help when others need it. That is what our family does. That is what humanity does. Are they scared? The boy asked. Probably, Emma admitted. Being brave does not mean you are not scared. It means you do what is right even when you are scared. Remember that, sweetie. When you grow up, there will be times when you have to choose between what is easy and what is right. I hope you will choose right even when it is hard. The boy thought about this. Will the bad people hurt Grandpa? Your grandpa is very tough, Emma said with a smile. And he is not alone. He has friends from all over the galaxy watching his back. That is the important thing. We are never alone. As long as we stand together, we can face anything. Far across the galaxy, the UES Retribution dropped out of FTL at the edge of the attacked colony system. What Admiral Marcus Drake saw made his blood run cold. The colony was intact, but surrounding it were ships unlike anything in Council records. Huge, organic-looking vessels that seemed to be grown rather than built. They were retreating now, pulling back into the darkness beyond the system. Get me everything our sensors can tell us about those ships, Marcus ordered. I want to know what we are dealing with. As his crew worked, Marcus thought about his wife Sarah, his daughter Emma, and his grandson, whose name he had suggested should be James. After the scientist who had given humanity the stars, he thought about all the species who were counting on the coalition to protect them. He thought about the lessons humanity had learned over thousands of years of warfare and survival. Whatever was out there in the dark, whatever had been sleeping in the spaces between stars, it had made a mistake. It had attacked coalition citizens. It had threatened the freedom that so many had fought and died to achieve. And humanity, along with all their allies, would respond the only way they knew how, with determination, courage, and an absolute refusal to surrender. The message was clear, written in the stars themselves, proven through 2 wars and countless smaller conflicts. Do not mess with humans. And if you do, you will face not just one species from one small planet, but a coalition of free peoples who have learned that standing together, they are unbreakable. The galaxy had changed. The old order was gone, and in its place was something new, something that had never existed before. A civilization built not on domination but on cooperation, not on fear but on mutual respect, not on the strength of the few but on the courage of the many. It was imperfect. It was chaotic. It was messy and complicated and sometimes frustrating. It was freedom. And it was worth fighting for. The end of the beginning.